Back at her parents' house, Polly tried to pretend that everything was normal, that nothing out of the ordinary had happened that day, that she hadn't kissed Archie Thompson passionately outside the lighthouse, that her body hadn't been overtaken with a desire and need so strong she didn't know how she'd be able to stop it. Her mother and father were looking after Polly's niece and nephew. She helped her mother prepare an early dinner for the 5 of them, and after Sarah came to pick the kids up. By 7:00 p.m., Polly was sitting in front of the television with her parents, who looked as though they had settled in for the night. They were yawning. She was wired. Archie Thompson, her nemesis. What was she thinking? Kissing him. Worse than that, telling him she wanted more. Begging for it. As her parents debated what to watch, Polly's phone buzzed with a message. Archie. She stifled a groan. Would you like to meet at the pub for a drink? A drink would be good. She wasn't tired, and what harm could it do? They should clear the air. Better to get the awkwardness out of the way, since they'd have to see one another again before they returned home, and they both knew what had happened that afternoon couldn't happen again. Can I borrow the car? I'm meeting someone for a drink? Her parents gave her the keys and mercifully didn't ask who she was meeting. Polly contemplated just leaving in the clothes she'd worn that day, but at the last minute changed into her most flattering pair of black trousers and a blue blouse. She drove the short distance to the pub, and as she pulled up, she saw he was waiting outside for her, almost like he thought she'd have second thoughts, or that he would. Standing next to him at the bar, she could smell subtle notes of his high-end aftershave. He'd made an effort, just as she had. Damn. This time, it really did feel like a date, and not a casual catch-up. He ordered them both glasses of wine, and they found a table. They sipped their wine and made small talk, but the kiss hung between them like a heavy cloud that she expected to break over them at any moment. Archie was wearing a crisp blue shirt with the top few buttons undone and slim-fit jeans that clung perfectly to his thighs. Just thinking of how those thighs might feel wrapped around her made her mouth go dry. She turned her attention from his body to his hands. That should have been harmless enough. She'd seen his hands hundreds of times before, but now she remembered his fingers sliding into her hair as he cradled her head. His palms sliding over the curves of her waist and lower pressing her against him. She shivered. She should get out of here before she did something else she'd regret. When she drank the last sip of her wine, she said, "This was a good idea. Clear the air. Get the awkwardness out of the way and carry on like nothing happened." He studied her. "We could do that, or we could go upstairs." Upstairs. Too late, she remembered that this was an old-style hotel with rooms upstairs. Bedrooms. "I've booked a room, just in case you'd like some privacy." She leant back, reeling. It could happen. He'd made it possible. She could go upstairs now and do all the things to Archie Thompson she'd wanted to do at the lighthouse this afternoon. "Oh no, have I misread this horribly?" Archie looked stricken, and Polly almost laughed. She picked up his hand. "No, you haven't." She followed him wordlessly out of the bar and up the stairs. She'd never been up here before. Never had a need. It was an old building, but like the bar below, had been extensively renovated. As she watched Archie slide the key into the lock, her stomach twisted. He seemed to pause for a moment before turning the knob, but his shoulders straightened and he pushed the door open. Archie Thompson! It would be a bit of fun. What harm could it do? He closed the door behind her, and she spied a bottle of champagne in an ice bucket. Confident much, she said with a confidence she herself didn't feel. Only hopeful. "Would you like a glass?" She shook her head. "Maybe in a bit." The buzz of another glass of wine might take away her nerves, but she also didn't want to lose the thrill that was coursing through her veins, or the pressure building inside her. And they hadn't even touched properly. A holiday fling with Archie Thompson. Why not? No one else here got her like he did. No one else here knew what it was like to have two lives, a Diamond Bay life and a rest of the world life. No one else knew what it was like to live and thrive in a metropolis. No one else was as unnerved as she was by the calmness of Diamond Bay. They stepped towards one another, and it happened in a rush. He smelt so good, tasted even better, felt familiar, but exciting, soft and hard in perfect amounts. They picked up where they'd broken off at the lighthouse. His lips were soft and as full as she'd seen under the mask, but the stubble was excitingly rough against her chin. Her knees gave away, but at the same instant she felt herself being lifted and placed gently on the bed. She was kissing Archie Thompson. She was undressing Archie Thompson, and it wasn't a trick. She could feel him unraveling beneath her fingertips, hear the shortness of his breath, see his lids flutter. Archie Thompson, who had almost kissed her once before, who had left her confused about her feelings for him for years. "Wait," she said. They both froze. Archie's hard body stilled against her soft one. "This was madness, wasn't it? Why now?" "What do you mean?" "Why didn't you kiss me at Brendan's 21st? He rolled back from her and sighed. She was sad to lose the heat from his body, but the view it afforded wasn't bad. His shirt was unbuttoned half off, exposing a broad chest smattered with light hair and a taut, flat stomach. Her fingers itched to caress him. Her mouth watered to kiss him. "Because you were my best mate's sister." "I still am. You know things are different now." "How are they?" Polly could think of 100 reasons why, but she wanted to hear them from him. "We're adults. We know the score. Neither of us will get hurt if we do this. Back then, I probably would have hurt you, and I couldn't live with that." She exhaled. Good they were on the same page. This was a fling. That was all. No one would get hurt. Polly gave in to the itch in her fingers and traced a line down his chest around his nipples. He sucked in a sharp breath, and she continued her sketch down his stomach, sliding her hand under the waistband of his pants. They didn't get around to opening the champagne. "Can we keep this between ourselves?" she asked, her heart in her throat, as they lay tangled in one another, gloriously naked a few hours later. She didn't regret what had just happened, but she didn't want word getting out either. Not to her brother or her parents, and certainly not to her grandparents. It wasn't that she thought they would disapprove. She dreaded their approval much more. They were bound to read more into this than there was. It was just a holiday fling. "If you want," he replied. "I think it'd be for the best." She picked up her phone and looked at the time. It was nearly midnight. "I really need to get back to my parents. They'll wonder where I am, and they need the car in the morning." "Of course, I should get home as well." Polly slipped her clothes and shoes back on, while Archie stayed lying in the bed watching her. Her stomach tightened with desire building up again, but she had to get back. Having her family know about this would only complicate matters, and this was just a casual fling, a one-off. Once she'd tidied herself up, she walked to the door. She held onto the handle, not knowing what to say or how to leave things. "Well, this was nice," she said. Nice. Her entire body was still thrumming. She felt better than she had in months. Archie looked at her from the bed. All he was wearing was a grin. "You know I wasn't sure if you'd be able to make it tonight. The room's booked for tomorrow as well. If you're interested." It became their routine. Sleep in their own beds, then head out for the day with each another, telling their families they were going on a picnic or a bushwalk, only to walk as far as the bed in the hotel and order room service for lunch. Her parents waved her off every morning, and she returned for dinner most nights, but she spent the days with Archie. It felt illicit. That was why it was so fun. The secrecy made it so exciting, and it was fun. It was addictive, dizzying, and exciting. She couldn't get enough of his body making love with him. But it wasn't just that. She loved lying in bed with him afterwards, holding one another, talking about everything and nothing all at once. When she felt herself become too comfortable, too dizzy with lust, she would remind herself that it was just a fling. Enjoying a holiday fling with Archie was one thing, but anything more was out of the question. They lived on different continents, neither of them were cut out for commitment, and in a week's time, they would both board planes that were headed in opposite directions. And that was fine. Her job kept her busy. Chefs worked ridiculous hours. Chefs in Manhattan worked the worst. And it was how she liked it. The pace, the challenge. She had plans. Big ones. This was a fling only, and that was perfect. Archie was having a great holiday, better than he had ever expected. Each night he caught up with his mother, saw old friends. But the days were for Polly holed up in what he'd come to think of as their room. A small but comfortable room above the pub where he and Polly spent hot mornings and languid afternoons. Where they left the outside world at the door and their clothes on the floor. The day before the anniversary party, Brendan invited him and Polly over for dinner and board games. "We can't arrive together. They'll suspect something," Polly said as she dressed herself that afternoon in the hotel room. "They'll suspect that I gave you a lift. And besides, we're not teenagers. We're grown, independent adults who can come to and from dinner parties as we like." Polly nodded. "And so what if they do? It's none of their business. And once we both leave—" He ended the sentence there. They both knew the missing words. It was unnecessarily cruel to say them. "And once we both leave this ends." The days spent with Polly in their room above the pub were the happiest he'd had in years. They clicked. She understood his London life, but she understood his Diamond Bay life too. She was fun. She didn't laugh at his jokes out of politeness. She laughed at his jokes because she got them. They got one another, and Polly was beautiful. He couldn't get enough of her. Their days together were too short, and the nights spent alone in his bed to maintain the privacy of the relationship were too long. But he was beginning to suspect some of the residents of Diamond Bay were onto them, despite their attempts to keep the relationship under wraps. It was a small town, and the pub was a local. It was difficult to keep that he was renting a room every day, a secret, even if the owners were discreet. He agreed with Polly that they should keep quiet about their fling. He didn't want well-meaning friends and family interfering either. Especially when he and Polly both knew this was a temporary thing. They both understood that after the anniversary party, they would go back to their respective cities. It was for the best. Neither of them were suited to commitment. They both had their own lives. If Brendan suspected anything when they arrived at his house at the same time, he didn't say anything. Nor did Sarah. The house smelt amazing, but Sarah was fussing. "Can I do anything to help?" Polly asked. "No," Brendan barked. "You can sit down and have a glass of wine. She's nervous enough cooking for you as it is." "Oh no, Sarah. I love being cooked for. I spend my life cooking for others. I dream of home-cooked meals I didn't make myself." Sarah's shoulders dropped and her face relaxed into a smile. "I do hope it's okay. If it's even half as good as it smells, it'll be amazing." It was strange being in the kitchen, Brendan passing him a beer, and he and Polly standing next to one another like they were here together. Like a couple. Even as he chatted to Brendan, he kept an ear out for what Polly was saying to Sarah, wishing he could reach out and grab her hand, slide his arm around her waist, and pull her against him. "Ciao." "Okay, Pictionary. Brendan said after dinner. Archie and I versus Sarah and Polly. Polly laughed. Not on your life, you cheat, you and Sarah, Archie and I. I don't cheat, but he does. I'll be watching you closely, Brendan warned. They sat on the floor around the coffee table. Archie was glad of the chance to have a reason to sit close to Polly. He took the first card and saw the competitive gleam in Polly's eye. He wanted to win the game for her, knowing now how it had hurt her so much when he and Brendan had ganged up on her when they were kids. Cheating was the easiest way to do that. But he also wanted to prove to her that the times he actually had cheated were few and far between. In the end, it wasn't a decision he had to make. The first card read Atlas, and after guessing book, she immediately guessed correctly. In turn, it took him 2 guesses to get her opera. Brendan eyed them suspiciously. We're not cheating, they said in unison. That's not what I meant, her brother retorted. Even though she was having a great evening, Polly longed to leave her brother's house and get back in the car with Archie, even if it was just for a short while. He drove them up the road towards town and pulled over to the side of the road in the dark. Once he cut the engine, he turned to her, and they fell into each other, their lips finding one another's instantly. Her body tugged towards him, longing to be closer than the car seats allowed. As the pressure built up inside her in an exquisite, impossible torture, Polly pulled away, panting. Do you think you could come up with an excuse to spend the night with me? Archie asked. Not go home. He nodded his head. She wanted to, but spending a whole night together, actually falling asleep together, that was dangerous. And not because it would signal to their family that they were more than friends, but because it would mean that to Polly as well. Don't be silly, Polly. How is it any different to what you've already been doing? But it was, because she knew that if she spent the entire night with him, they would be crossing the line they had agreed not to cross. The feeling had been creeping up on her for days. She wasn't sure what she wanted, only that it was more than what she had now. Seeing her friends and family so content, she was beginning to wonder if she really could make space in her life for someone else. But even if she was ready to settle down sadly, she wouldn't be doing it with commitment-averse adventurer Archie. New York isn't that far from London, Archie said in the darkness of the parked car. What are you suggesting? Archie's question that they spend the night together had tripped something inside Polly fear. She wanted to go with him. She wanted to spend the night with him so much it terrified her. I'm not ready for this to end, Archie continued. Polly wasn't ready either. But what was the alternative? A long-distance thing? Why not? He said. In her experience, long distance was just a slow and painful way to end a doomed relationship. If neither was willing to uproot their life for the other, then what else wouldn't they give up? What was the point of a relationship where neither person was prepared to compromise? She didn't want to say goodbye to Archie, but messing around with him for a few more months, or even longer, would only delay the inevitable. It would only hurt more when they did finally part. Archie wanted adventure to know what was across the next ocean. Polly was ready for a change, but she didn't want to give everything up for Archie. I'm not sure. Besides, this was Archie, her childhood tormentor, her nemesis. You don't really still think that, do you? Archie may not have been about to push her into a pool, but he still wasn't offering commitment. He was seeking the next challenge, the next deal. Polly may not have known what she wanted, but she realized then that if she didn't leave now, Archie had the potential to break her heart. Utterly and completely. I think we need to end this, don't you? It'll be better for both of us in the long run. We always knew it was a holiday fling. We're adults. We know the score. Neither of us will get hurt if we do this. Those words seemed so careless now. We can still enjoy tonight, can't we? He asked, starting the car and pulling out onto the road. No, I'd better go home. I told Mum I'd help her get ready for the party tomorrow night. There's the cake to make the decorations to organize. But we'll see each other tomorrow. At the party. I meant before that. At the hotel. Archie drove Polly along the quiet street to her parents' house. The longer it took her to answer his question, the larger the pit in his stomach grew. By the time they reached her house, she still hadn't answered. We're adults. We know the score. Neither of us will get hurt if we do this. Those words seemed so foolish now. After spending most of the last 2 weeks with her, he could hardly believe he'd been so nonchalant about it. This was Polly. He'd never treat her so casually. But she was right, he realized. What else was he offering her but a holiday fling? This has been lovely, but we both know it has to end, and I think we need to do the sensible adult thing, don't you? She finally said. What was the sensible adult thing? For a second, Archie thought the answer was get married. Of course, that wasn't what she meant. We should say our goodbyes now. Tomorrow should be about Ken and Maisie, not us. Thank you, Archie, for a great holiday. She leant over and brushed her lips gently across his cheek, but his skin turned to stone under them. His body was suddenly heavy and mobile, frozen. He couldn't speak, but it was just as well. He didn't trust himself to say something he wouldn't later regret. When he heard the click of the door behind her, he groaned and rested his head on the steering wheel. He didn't know what he wanted, but he knew what he didn't want. He didn't want to lose Polly. He wanted Polly, and he wanted her every day and every night. Don't be ridiculous, a voice told him. This is a holiday thing. She knows it even if you don't. Neither of you are cut out for commitment. You both have busy jobs, and you live on different continents. Get a grip. He wanted adventure excitement. They both did. That was why they'd left Diamond Bay in the first place. Archie drew a deep breath and restarted the car. Saying goodbye to Polly would be hard, but it was the way things had to be. Polly dragged herself through the next day in a daze, her feet heavy, her heart aching. Saying goodbye to Archie had been one of the most difficult things she ever had to do in her life. But she was relieved to have done it. Every further moment she spent with Archie just made things harder. Polly waited at the entrance of the hotel for the guests to arrive. Her mother had told her several times how beautiful she looked, with her long hair loose in glossy waves around her shoulders, wearing a long rose-colored gown. Her appearance didn't match the turmoil inside her. Her heart was cracking, but she told herself she should be relieved. By saying goodbye first, she had a chance to salvage her heart. She had a chance to recover. If she'd waited for Archie to say those words as he inevitably would, it might just destroy her. Archie Thompson, how was it possible to feel so much for one person? Irritation sometimes, but also gratitude, affection, and desire, and love. She might be thinking of the next steps in her life. She might be thinking about opening her life and her heart to someone else. She might even be wondering if she could share it with Archie, but that was irrelevant because he wasn't thinking any of those things. The guests began to trickle in. Most of the town was there. Everyone knew Ken and Maisie and wanted to congratulate them. The irony of the evening was a gentle torture for Polly. Her grandparents were celebrating 75 years of marriage, and she was celebrating the end of another relationship. Polly busied herself welcoming all the guests, trying not to think about Archie. But all her senses went into overdrive when he finally walked in with his mother and stepfather. He was dressed more formally than the rest of the crowd in a suit that looked as though it had come from the boutiques of Mayfair, tailored to fit his figure perfectly. In his light blue tie that made his already bright blue eyes brilliant. She watched him scan the room, and when those blue eyes found her, they clouded, and he simply nodded, but made no move to come over to her. She thought she might burst into tears. This wasn't how this holiday was meant to go. She was meant to have a break, go back to New York refreshed. Instead, she was going to return with a broken mess of a heart. She moved around the room, smiling, making only the minimum small talk. Anything else was impossible. She was crumbling inside. Archie was sitting and speaking with her grandparents, so she was staying as far away as possible. But when her grandmother caught her eye and waved her over to where they were seated on the balcony, Polly released a quiet groan. She couldn't rebuff her 95-year-old grandmother. Archie jumped up and offered her his chair. "I was just leaving," he said. "You stay?" Maisie ordered. "Get another chair." Great. Matchmaking. If only she knew. "We're so glad you both came back. We are absolutely touched," Ken said. "I wouldn't have missed it. I miss you both so much," Polly said. Despite the frequent video calls, she didn't see them enough. "We miss you too, but we are so proud of you. Of both of you." Maisie reached for Archie's hand too. "Diamond Bay was always too small for the pair of you. Always looking for the next adventure. You're both so brave." Polly nodded. It was true, but now she didn't feel brave. She just felt like running away. Polly looked gorgeous, wearing a stunning deep pink dress, her long dark hair tumbling like silk around her shoulders. He wanted to reach for her, hold her hand, press her to him. He wanted her so much it was a marvel he was still managing to breathe sitting next to her. "Congratulations again. 75 years. It's amazing," he said. "It's easy when you marry someone so wonderful," Ken said, smiling at Maisie. Archie couldn't imagine the life they had shared so many years. He knew marriage must be harder than Ken was making out. Not that it mattered. He was never going to be married for 75 years. He probably wouldn't be married at all. "What do you like most about being married?" Archie asked. "Not having to go on Tinder dates," replied Ken. "They sound awful," Archie laughed. "They can be, yes." He stole a quick glance at Polly, but couldn't tell if she was about to cry or laugh. Ken's expression turned serious. "Having a person who is your memory, the keeper of your heart. Having a person who knows you better than you know yourself. It hasn't all been perfect," Maisie continued. "It isn't all passion and flowers and fun. It's hard work, but that's what makes it worthwhile. Because life isn't always fun. It's challenging and heartbreaking, but having someone by your side makes it bearable." Archie didn't dare look at Polly. "What did you notice about him first?" he heard her ask her grandmother. "His eyes and his backside. He had the tightest muscles." Polly coughed on her champagne. "Grandma!" she exclaimed. Archie knew his own face was bright red. "What?" Maisie chuckled. "He did. But how did you know he was the one for you?" Polly asked. "I didn't," Maisie said, and Ken laughed. "I didn't marry him thinking we'd be together for 75 years. Heavens, no. If you want guarantees like that, you'd never be able to do anything." Archie let those words sit with him for a moment. She was telling him it was all right that he wasn't sure. She was telling him that sometimes you just had to take a chance. Could he take a chance with Polly? All his life, he'd shunned commitment. But had he been wrong about that? "Rumor has it that you pair have been sneaking out together and spending time upstairs here," Ken said. It was Archie's turn to nearly choke on his beer. Luckily, Polly hadn't been mid-sip, or she surely would have covered her grandparents with a mouthful of champagne. "I don't know what you mean," she spluttered. "You think you can keep a secret in this town? Exactly how long have you been away?" Polly's cheeks were flushed a pretty pink, but that only reminded him of the breathless days spent in the room above them. The room just above where they were sitting now. Yes, well, we've been spending some time together, Archie said, hoping the answer would satisfy Ken and Maisie. "Sometime I hear you've built quite the love nest upstairs," Maisie said. Archie had experienced some awkward moments in his life, but this one topped them all. His thoughts floated above his body as he spoke. His mouth was not his own, but he had to say it for Polly's sake. "We're just friends, that's all." "That's right, just old friends," Polly agreed. He didn't risk looking at her. "I'm not trying to get you both to move back here. Diamond Bay isn't for everyone," Maisie said. "And thank goodness it isn't. Otherwise, everyone would come here. You are both always so adventurous, always looking for excitement and something new. Isn't marriage the greatest adventure of all?" Polly forced a smile. If her grandparents knew how much her heart was breaking, surely they wouldn't be saying all these things in front of her. Archie couldn't make his excuses to get out of there fast enough, and thankfully, her grandparents didn't insist he stay. More well-wishers came to speak to the happy couple, and Polly managed to slip away. She needed to go outside, get some air, and maybe get an earlier flight home. With her heart racing and the room closing in on her, she slipped outside and to the low stone wall overlooking the bay. Back to where they'd sat that first night. "Isn't marriage the greatest adventure of all?" As she reached the wall, she heard a voice echoing her own thoughts. "That was some relationship advice." Inside, Polly crumpled. Couldn't they just leave things as they were? They'd said their goodbyes. Why drag it out? But at the same time, there was nowhere in the world she'd rather be than with Archie. She was almost powerless to leave. 75 years, they probably know what they're talking about, she said, lowering herself onto the wall next to him. "Probably," he agreed. They sat still, letting the cool breeze and the sound of the breaking waves wash over them. "I never thought of this as just a fling," Archie said, suddenly turning his whole body to face her. "It's okay if you did, and I know I made you think that, but I just wanted you to know that I wouldn't treat you like that. I'm sorry about pushing you into the pool. I'm sorry about not telling you who I was at Brendan's party, but I do want to see you again. I want to see if we can find a way to make this work. I don't know how exactly, but I want us to figure it out together. Polly, I adore you. I'm not ready for this to end." Archie's words stopped Polly's world. Her thoughts, her plans, everything stood still. Had she heard him correctly? With her heart in her throat, Polly tried to speak in a way that made sense, even as she struggled with her feelings herself. "I'm not ready for this to end either." And then she took all of her bravery, every ounce of her spirit, and said, "But I don't want a part-time relationship with you, or a long-distance one. I don't want that either. I want us to be together, live together." He picked up her hand and clasped it in his. "Really?" "Yes, really. I'm in Polly. I don't want anyone else. For as long as I live, I don't want to be with anyone else either." She squeezed his hand and moved closer to him. "I just want to be with you." When she leant into his arms, everything fell into place. She may not have known everything, where they would live, what they would do, but she knew they would be together. "I'll come to New York if you like. I'll go wherever you want. I want to have another adventure, but I want my next adventure to be with you." Archie understood her like no one else. He was her past, and now her future too. If you loved their secret spring fling, be sure to read other books from Justine Lewis, including her latest novel, Breaking the Best Friend Rule, which is the first book in the Invitation from Bali duet.